So this is your teaching journey. And where you guys are coming from just now, you're possibly just at the end of your undergraduate degree, or you've maybe done your undergraduate degree some time ago. Some of you might have gone off into industry or into other education. Some of you might have been bringing up children. There are all sorts of different routes for that first part of the teaching journey. But you will arrive with us with your undergraduate degree under your belt. You then embark on the professional graduate diploma in education for 10 months, and a successful completion of that leads to the provisional registration for teaching standards in Scotland. So hopefully this time next year, you'll be well into that process. After that, in Scotland, you are able to progress to what we call the teacher induction scheme. It's sometimes referred to as probation, and it just means that you go into a school in Scotland and you then have a guaranteed income for a year. Teaching in a school, you don't have any control of what school you are allocated to, but one of the things that you are asked at the end of your PGDE is to indicate which local authorities you're willing to work in. There is also an option for you to tick the anywhere route. So that means that you're quite happy to go to any local authority. And sometimes that involves going to quite a remote local authority. So for example, Highlands and Islands, Argyll and Bute, Dumfries and Galloway, where there is more of a shortage of teachers. And if you elect to do that remote route, there is an additional payment that is available to you. I think it's about £8,000, but I'm not sure about that. Okay, and at the end of that probation or teaching induction scheme, you then become a fully registered teacher to teach in Scotland. A little bit about our PGDE course overview. So it lasts for 36 weeks. You will spend 18 weeks on campus, and that is when you do your teacher education stuff. That is where you do the various modules, the written modules that are assessed in the university over those 18 weeks. People sometimes ask me, what does the pattern of working during those 18 weeks look like? And what I can say to you is that generally speaking, over the course of a week, our English students, for the last couple of years anyway, have had maybe a couple of days where they don't have to be on campus and attending classes. So it is possible for you to keep on some part-time employment if that is something that is really necessary for you during that 18 weeks. The further 18 weeks, however, is school placement, and that's when you go into a school, and of course at that time you'll be working the full 35 hours that is required of teachers, so you won't be able to do any further employment at that time. That allocation is run by student placement system. Now, what that means is it's not the university that allocates you to a particular school. It's a separate entity, and that entity is called SPS, the Students Placement System, and they run allocations for all universities for all teacher education. And one of the things that we have to stipulate with you just now is if you're successful and come and do your PGDE, when you are allocated to a school, you have to be prepared to travel up to 90 minutes in either direction to the school that you're allocated to. Now, I have to say that tends not to happen. It tends not to be the case that you have to travel as far as that. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I've only had a handful of students who were in that position, and basically they just had to get on with it. Generally speaking, you'll be allocated a school that is really quite reachable and local to you. Okay, so in Scotland, we're accredited by the General Teaching Council for Scotland, and once you're registered as a teacher, a fully qualified teacher, you are automatically having to be accepted into the GTCS and pay registration fees every year. It's not very expensive. During your PGDE, you will have the opportunity to study at master's level up to 120 credits. Okay, across the various modules that you do with us in the university, you can then get started on your master's qualification, and 120 units credits is a great start for you. It's not mandatory to do that, and you can obviously just go ahead and qualify at diploma level across all the modules, but it's a great opportunity just for you to start your own research career as well with us. So I'll just talk a wee bit about how those master's credits are allocated across the course. You'll see here that there are 3 parts to the master's qualifications. The first one is Education Studies Professional Values, we call it ESPV for short, and that basically entails the sort of theory and the sort of discourse around education. And professional values is all about trying to source integrity and trust and thinking about what do we mean by education, what is education for, thinking about things like social aspects of teaching, such as closing the attainment gap, dealing with poverty in schools, dealing with children with adverse childhood experiences and things like that. This is the part of the course that really develops you as a person, and it is all about what teaching means. Why are we here? What are we doing it for? What is the purpose of it? So it's really quite philosophical. And then what we ask you to do at the end of that is to produce a 2,000-word essay. And it is normally on something like, discuss some sort of aspect of human rights in relation to education. The second module is Professional Learning Through Inquiry, PLTE. And this is a new part of our course that we're just developing this year. So we're running it for the first time. What it involves is you becoming a researcher as you are becoming a teacher. It's about getting you to think about how you will develop research methods and develop research thinking in your job. And what we ask you to do is to design a hypothetical research inquiry that you would take part in or run in a school. And once you're in schools, you'll start to get ideas about what your line of inquiry might be. What we do is we describe this as the stone in your shoe, something that niggles you about your practice, something that niggles about the experiences of children in the classroom. So it might be something like, how can I use starter tasks to engage children at the beginning of lessons? And you'll design an inquiry, a project that will take you through that inquiry. And what you have to do at the end of that module is to produce an academic poster, which outlines your ideas for the inquiry. And you have to provide an annotated bibliography, which takes you through the reading that you do to support your inquiry. It's a really interesting, vibrant module. People are really enjoying it. And the third, possibly the most important part of the course, is professional skills. And that is made up of 2 separate modules. The first one is Curriculum and Pedagogy, which you study with me and Navan. And that is all about how to become an English teacher, how to develop your discipline, not discipline as in checking kids and, behaviour management or anything like that, just the discipline of English, how to get children interested in reading, how to develop literacy skills, how to engage, basically. The second part of that is professional practice. And what that involves is looking at the school systems and what it is like to work in a school and, what it is like to engage with other professionals and maybe use systems within schools to support children. The other part of professional practice is also that you're assessed on your practice in schools when you're sent out to school. So that's the course structure. And here I've just listed the kinds of things that we do within C&P, which is Curriculum and Pedagogy. So when you come on a Friday, this tends to happen on a Friday, when you come on a Friday to study with me and with Navan, these are the kinds of things that we'll be discussing and working through with you. So unit and lesson planning, how to put together a lesson plan is a huge part of your training and education in this first important year. We go through listening and talking skills with the children. We talk a lot about the design of CFE. We are very big on critical literacies. This is what Navan and I consider to be the unique selling point of our course, because critical literacies is all about empowering children to be able to understand and develop their literacies in contexts that suit them. So what we do is we look at what is a text. A text can be anything. It can be poems and plays and novels. It can also be the spoken word. It can be advertising. It can be signs in the street. It can be our sort of hidden coded language that we use through non-verbal gestures as well. We look at the sort of fundamentals of teaching, so questioning, scaffolding, modelling, assessing, feedback, all of those things that help you to become a good teacher and a good practitioner. We look at course design and assessment, so we'll take you through live assessments from children in schools. We do a little bit on Shakespeare and poetry. One of my previous job iterations was a media studies teacher in schools, so I do a lot on media education and how to teach media within English, and also how to teach media as a separate discipline. We have someone who comes in to do a little bit on drama and English, and she's great. We're working on developing a reading culture. One of the projects that we've got just now is that we work with a school in North Lanarkshire, and our students currently team up with the kids in the school, and they're sort of reading mentors with the children. So they have video conferences with the kids, and they talk about what they're reading, and they have conversations about reading. So that all happens remotely through Teams, and that's been a great project this year. And it's just helped us to connect and stay sort of in relationships with kids when it has been difficult getting into schools. Navan does a bit on teaching creative writing. We have someone who comes in to cover EAL, which is English as an Additional Language, which is a separate qualification within schools, which stands as an alternative to higher English and National 5 English. We talk a lot about how to bridge the attainment gap and how to deal with poverty from a specifically English perspective. And we do a little bit with you developing your resilience and getting you ready for the very, very hard work, but very, very rewarding work that happens in schools. Finally, acting on feedback. How do we respond when we get a bit of criticism? How do we take feedback on? How can we show that we've acted on it and thought about it? So that's just a sort of snapshot of the sorts of things that we cover in lectures. In addition to that, we also do some micro teaching before you go into school. So we get some groups together so you can practice teaching in front of each other and with each other. Another thing that we do is we do some outdoor learning. So what we do is we take the whole class into Merchant City, which is a sort of really vibrant, bustling, energetic part of Glasgow, which is right next to the city centre and right next to the university. And what we do is we go round and look at some of the problematic aspects of Glasgow architecture. And we look at the naming of some streets in Glasgow which are associated with slavery and things like that. So all of that is about building our understanding of how we, create environments and how children can maybe talk about the way that cities are structured. Okay, so this little bit here is about placements, and obviously you're going to be secondary practitioners, and you go into 2 different schools. So it's 8 weeks in semester 1 and 10 weeks in semester 2. And those will be 2 different schools. You don't just go to one school, you go to 2. It's really useful if you're placed in 2 very different schools from very different local authorities. But that doesn't always happen, but you'll certainly be in 2 different schools. Okay, how do we assess you? I'm not sure if you can actually see this very well because it's on the small screen. But I can read it out for you anyway and discuss it with you. So first of all, you are assessed on your placement experience. That means that the colleagues that you work with in schools will provide feedback to us, and they'll provide feedback to you, and you'll be given really clear guidance across the whole 18 weeks about what it is you need to do to improve and what your strengths and skills are. And at the end of that placement experience, the school mentor, usually it's a person that works in the department, the English department. Sometimes it's the principal teacher of English who does this. Sometimes it is somebody within the department that wants to develop into a principal teacher. Sometimes it's just somebody that's interested in working with students, but they'll provide a final school report, which is either satisfactory or not yet satisfactory. So you'll get a final school report at the end of both placements. Also, Navan or myself or one of our associated tutors will come out to the school and have a look at your practice, and we'll get a chance to talk about your practice. And again, we provide feedback at the end of those lessons, and those are either satisfactory or not yet satisfactory. There isn't really a grading system to say, you know, A, B or C. It's you're either getting there or you're not quite getting there. Secondly, you have your assessment from the other modules. So one essay for ESPV, education skills, professional values, academic poster and annotated bibliography for professional learning through inquiry. There is a further presentation that you do for me in the van, which is based on your practice in school. And there's one further essay for professional practice. So all of those are delivered by you either through essays or the academic poster or a presentation. There are no exams, which is a nice thing to hear. No exams in this course, lots and lots of continuous assessment though. You have to attend. Basically, you have to be present. You have to make sure that you are at all of your lectures, all of your modules. We will keep track of that. And, you know, you have to submit your working time. There are extensions available for most things if you're struggling with your coursework and your work commitments. But basically, not many people don't pass this. Basically, if you're suited to be a teacher and you work hard, you'll get through it. What might be of interest to some of you is if you're qualified in 2 subjects. So, for example, the one that happens most with us is people that want to study English and French, maybe, or English and Spanish. So, if you have got a dual qualification in another language, for example, we can sometimes get you through a dual qualification route within the School of Education. There is sometimes the opportunity to do a dual registration with something like history or modern studies as well. It's a little bit more difficult because those subjects are normally very highly oversubscribed. But it's something worth looking into if you do have 2 disciplines. Okay, what do you need to provide in terms of your expertise and your past academics? You have to have a degree that is validated by an HE institution in the UK or an equivalent from an institution outside the UK. This degree must have at least 80 credits relevant to English language and literature. Now, that can either be 80 credits for English literature on its own, or it can be 80 credits that is made up of a combination of at least 40 credits in English literature and another 40 credits that might come from other literacy related disciplines. So I'm thinking media, journalism, creative writing. We have in the past kind of looked at law and things like that. Anything that involves a lot of literacy, a lot of reading, a lot of handling of language. So we are quite, Navan and I are quite open to looking at people that have got these sort of combination degrees or expertise across a few different qualifications. But you have to have at least 40 credits within that is specifically English literature. The literature has to be in there. We do need a higher English at grade C or above. National 5 maths, unfortunately. Thank goodness we didn't need that when I was starting out. We ask here, I mean, this is on the slide, that you have evidence that you have experience working with children in any kind of sort of setting or context. Now, I do realise, and we are very cognisant of this, that in the last year, you know, opportunities to engage in that kind of experience have been really, really limited. So we are really willing to think outside the box when it comes to this. So if you don't have any recent experience, don't worry about that. What you have to do in your interview is just convince us that you have the necessary personality or qualities to do some work with children. You need to show a wee bit of an understanding of modern education, and it is advantageous to you to sort of know what you know curriculum for excellence is, because that's their curriculum in Scotland. You don't have to have a working knowledge of the documentation or anything like that, just a sort of notional idea of what it's all about. And most importantly, you just need to be able to relate to people, and that will come across in your interviews. Okay, so the information here is about the process itself. So you will have made your application, most of you already, provided your documentation to, you can see the email address there, pgde.docsupport@strath.ac.uk. You'll then be selected to come to interview with myself or Navan or Susie, who is one of our associated tutors, and we'll have a sort of half-hour face-to-face chat with you. What happens during the interview is you're asked to make a sort of 2 or 3 minutes short presentation where you sort of make a pitch for a place. So what you do is you just do, 2 or 3 minutes on why you're right for this, why you want it. And then we follow that up with the 3 or 4 questions, just a chat about education, really. And then the decision is you're either successful or unsuccessful. If you are successful, that will either be a conditional offer or an unconditional offer. The conditional offer for you guys tends to be people that are still waiting on their National 5 maths, or people that haven't quite finished their degree yet. They're still sort of finishing it off. So, we want you to do well at the interview, and we want you to come and study at Strathclyde. So we do try and make the process as fair and as enjoyable as possible. There's a little bit of information here about fees and funding, which I won't go into because I don't have any expertise on this, but that will be on the PowerPoint for you, which you'll get after this presentation. Okay, guys, I think that's time for questions then. I don't know if Nicola's...
Hi there, I'm here. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the questions that people have submitted for you, Sharon. So if you do have a question, just submit it now and we'll go through them, okay? So the first question that I have received is, for the interview, are we expected to know about the curriculum and what is it that you look for?
Right. Well, as I said just a wee minute ago, we don't want you to be able to quote the curriculum or, say lots and lots of stuff about it, or, that just shows that you've done a bit of reading. What we really want you to be able to demonstrate about the curriculum is to sort of say that you've read some of the documentation and that you're aware of what the values and the ethics of Curriculum for Excellence are. A starting point would be, and write this down, is to find out what the 4 capacities are in Curriculum for Excellence and be able to demonstrate that you know what they are. That's the baseline that we're looking for. As for the other part of your question, which is about what are we looking for, we're just looking for people that are, passionate about English, really, passionate about reading. Another thing that we really do look for in the interview is an understanding of the challenges of the job and the challenges, especially within English teaching, and thinking creatively about how difficult it is for some children to engage with English and what is it that makes them turn off from it. You'll probably realise yourself without doing too much reading that it's children that don't like to read, or children that haven't been read to when they're children, children that don't have books in the house, children who are in families where reading isn't valued, or maybe even where education isn't valued. A sort of staleness comes into a person's perception of their own culture when that happens to them. And they sometimes come to English with quite a damaged outlook on their abilities in literacy. And that can make teaching English really difficult. So we're looking for you to be aware of that and to be sort of empathetic to those kind of concerns and have good ideas about what you would do, what can be done, how can those children be helped.
Yeah. Also, within the personal statement, we are looking for an understanding of the modern education. Also, just really talking about your skills and attributes within your personal statement and how you can contribute them to the profession. So when you're getting assessed, we're looking for you to have the right skills and attributes, the right building blocks for us to develop, to grow for the profession. But you will have to have some element of understanding of modern education because it is postgraduate level, and because it's a 10-month course, we need you to have the building blocks all ready for us to develop and grow. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these 9 other questions. Okay, Carrie, are you able to tell us who we can talk to about dual registration? I would love to do English with history.
I have had a few people that I've interviewed this year so far who've asked about English and history. I have to say, when I have passed it on to Sarah Proctor, who is she's the PGDE leader for history, just now, she's basically come back to every one of them and said, I am full this year. I'm really sorry. I don't know if you agree, or you'll know more about this than me, Nicola, but
Yeah.
it's always really hard to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I was the one who assessed all the history applications. Now there is set dual registrations that we offer, and we are willing to look at any combination depending, but it's dependent on the timetable. Again, English requirements are different from history requirements. Now, history asks for an honours degree. It's also asking for English and maths prior to applying. Now, again, spaces are very, very limited. I received a lot of applications for history, a lot of applications. But what can happen is you don't necessarily need to dual qualify during the PGDE. You can go on to do your degree, and there is a way to do that through your local authority when you're within and registered as a teacher to do so. Okay, the more information on that is on the General Teaching Council website, and it's just under add additional subject, and it really just says if you're an our secondary teacher and I want to add an additional subject to teaching, it will tell you how you can go about that. So just because you can't dual qualify if there's spaces or timetabling issues doesn't necessarily mean you wouldn't be able to do it later on, dependent if you have the credits to do so. Okay. Right, let's go to the next question. Okay, hi Sharon, I don't have experience of working with children in secondary and primary contexts since working at school, and I'm now 10 years into working, so it is definitely a concern.
I wouldn't worry about that too much. We were all children once, and most of us, know children or maybe got younger siblings or cousins or whatever. I don't think it is an explicit concern if you don't have hands-on experience in a school. As I say, the last year in particular has been difficult. But if you've been out of education for 10 years, you've been working presumably and had your hands full. So that is fine. It doesn't necessarily preclude you from doing well at this. As Nicola says, if you have done a little bit of reading around the subject of education, and you seem to know what education is for, and you've got a contribution to make, really, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah, it's depending what session you're interested in. So this session, we understand it's really, really hard to get into schools. It's hard to get that experience. But what I always say is if it is the next again session, try and get experience because it's not only beneficial to your application. So for session 2022, it's not only beneficial for your application, it prepares you for the PGDE. It prepares you for getting an idea of what the profession's like and what placement will be like. It prepares you. So I always say if there's an opportunity to go out to a school and get that flavour of what it is, to be a teacher and to teach within a secondary school, try and get it, try and get it. But again, we do have an understanding that is very, very difficult this year. And if it is this session that you're applying for, we do look at other contextual stuff that you've done that you feel is relevant for your application and your interview. Okay. Um, let's see. What sort of things make your application unsuccessful?
You'd maybe be better answering that one, Nicola.
Yeah.
You don't see the applications at our end.
So the first thing that we do when we're looking at an application is we look at the entry criteria first. So usually if we are unsure about your degree just based on the information you've gave us in the application, we'll ask for a transcript, and that's when we'll look at your credits. So we're ideally looking for literacy credits, and there's a certain amount that we're looking for within your degree. That is the only time that I've known for an English application at application stage to be unsuccessful, is because it's not got the relevant credits. Again, we'll advise you further, okay, and we'll give you feedback. Please don't worry about that. We are here to guide you through that journey. But I've never known for someone at an application stage to be unsuccessful unless the personal statement is extremely poor. You have to work at the personal statement. If we see that the personal statement is being done very quickly, there's really bad spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, if there's absolutely no passion and no effort into it, then yeah, we'll question it. We'll question it, and sometimes I would take that to Sharon and say, "What do you think about this personal statement?" So it's really make sure you're reading the entry criteria on our web pages and what we're asking for, and make sure you prepare, as Sharon said through that table that she gave. You have to prepare for these applications, and you have to prepare for your personal statement, because we want to see that commitment from you. Okay.
And sorry, just to
Yeah.
interrupt. And at interview level, the only times that I've seen people just clearly been unsuccessful right off the bat is if they've got nothing to say. If you dry up and you've got nothing to say and you haven't prepared, then no, you're not for us. Other times that I've had to really think about a person is if they seem to be in it for the wrong reasons, and that tends to be people that think, I just want a steady job, and I haven't really done a lot of thinking about how much skill this job takes. So generally, you know, Navan and I and Susie as well, we're really nice. We want people to do well, and we make it as easy as possible at interview stage for you to sell yourself and to show that you're part of it, the education community. So when you don't do well, it tends to be because you've kind of maybe been a wee bit unprepared or a bit lazy in your thinking, which hopefully doesn't happen.
So if I haven't applied and I've missed the deadline, what are my options? So we're still open for PGDE English, so you can still apply. We can't guarantee when that will officially close, but we are usually open compared to last year, right up to July, August period. Then the August period is when it starts. We would always say, if you are considering applying, apply as early as possible, because you can't guarantee when that deadline will close and when we'll meet the target for home applicants. It depends if you're home, international or UK. But yeah, apply as soon as possible. Prepare your application, apply as soon as possible, so that you're able to be prepared for the start date. Okay. Is experience with young family members visible experience? So when I'm looking at if this is an application, if I'm looking at an application, a lot of people do mention about the role of a mother, and they really focus on it. And for me, it's having an understanding that a role of a teacher and a role of a parent is completely different. It's really, when it comes to family members, it's really how you write that within your personal statement. A lot of people focus within the role of a mother rather than the role of a teacher. So it's depending, it can be detrimental to your application when you focus solely on that. We really want an idea of what your understanding of the profession is, what your skills and attributes are, previous experience, an understanding of modern education. These are the core things that we're looking for within your application. Okay. Do you want to add to that at all, Sharon?
I would only just add to say that being a parent is a huge part of understanding children. I absolutely get that. But in your application, just make sure what aspects of those skills are transferable into a classroom setting. And also that whole idea of you're in a nurturing capacity in a school and within a classroom, you've got to have the professional values and skills to be a nurturer, but you still have to have that distance and acknowledge that, you know, the personal and the professional are quite separate. Although they do cross over sometimes, they are quite separate. So if you do want to big up family experience, don't just take for granted that that is okay. You've got to sort of take from the experience what I have learned and what I will take into the classroom is.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's being careful with the wording in your personal statement. What sort of text do you usually work with aside from Shakespeare? Any modern or contemporary key texts?
Yes. So last year, one of the projects that we did after the terrible summer that we'd had, with the Black Lives Matter and what happened in America, we decided to make our core text for this year Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. And there was a BBC adaptation of that not too long ago either. I think it might still be in the iPlayer. But what we got our students to do was to go through the book in micro teaching groups and build units of work for broad general education, which is S1 to S3. So what we have at the end of that is a core text, and everybody now has materials that they're going to take into school. Another book that we've got quite excited about this year is Shuggie Bain, which just won the Booker Prize, written by a man from Glasgow. And it's about a little boy growing up in Glasgow, and his mother is an addict. And, it is just fantastic. So I think for next year, Navan and I are talking about using that particular text to take into the senior phase in Scotland, which is S4, 5 and 6. So we're looking to develop that book as a higher text, and we're wanting students next year to work on that. So those are the texts so far that have really been the sort of big texts, but we do an awful lot in poetry, and we do have to cover the Scottish text element in Scotland, which is part of the exam. So there is a set text list for that you'll find on the SQA website. So if you just go into Google and put in Scottish set text, you'll see the drama, poetry and prose that is required to be studied. So we do an awful lot in that as well. So lots of Scottish stuff.
Okay, this isn't our question. This is probably one I'll be able to answer. I'm asking on behalf of a friend who's already done her interview almost 3 weeks ago. When roughly do applicants hear back with a decision? Her interviewer says she would hear back within a week, and she's a little worried about no updates. I would say for her to email us in. We are a little bit busy and inundated with emails right now. As you know, it's challenging times right now. We're all working from home, so we're receiving a lot more emails than what we used to because we're not got access to calls. So we are trying to get through our emails as fast as possible, but it has to, usually with our team, the decision goes to us and then we will pass that on to a central admissions team. Now, we can guarantee that it's processed as fast as possible on our end, but I can't always guarantee that it will be done as fast as possible through central admissions. They're a completely different team, and they deal with all admissions within the university. That's why I would say maybe email us in so that we can look into it and just get a push on what that decision is. Okay, so the email address would be has-inquiries. I'll write that to your reply, okay, in a minute, and she can contact us, okay.
Worth saying to your pal just to get in touch with their interviewer, if that was me or if it was Navan, because there might be a wee glitch at our end as well. So just tell her just to get in touch. It's fine.
Yep. I'm gonna give you my email address now, okay. And then what we'll do is I'll either pass that on to Navan or Sharon, but I'll look into it first, okay. Okay, so Caitlin, how big are class sizes for English on the PGDE? Also, if we have been out of education for a while and in our profession, any advice on a reference for the application? Would a professional reference be suitable as gaining work experience in school has not been possible this year? We do accept academic and professional references. Yes, we do. Usually when we're looking at a reference, we're looking for the referee to really highlight some of the points that you are emphasising within the personal statement. So talking about your skills and attributes and really just backing up the statements that you're making within the personal statement. So yeah, you can contact employer and ask for them to give you a reference so you feel that's the best person to back up the statements made within your personal statement, like your skills and attributes. Okay.
The first part of your question there is how big are class sizes for English on the PGDE? If that means how big is our English class at Strathclyde, well, we started off with just over 100 this year and we're down to about 90, and we're expecting to be in the 80s and 90s this year. So it's a fairly big class. It's the biggest within the secondary framework.
Yep. Also, my course application isn't complete yet. I'm waiting my previous qualifications from A-levels in schools. Is it likely to still be open for a while, or better to wait until next year? If you could just elaborate a little bit more on what do you mean awaiting my previous qualifications? Are you awaiting the certificate? Are you aware of the qualifications you've achieved and you're just waiting for the certificate? If that is the case, you can still apply even though you don't have the certificates yet. If you can just tell me a little bit more of what you mean by that, that'd be great. Sorry, I don't know your name. It's been posted anonymously. Brodie, what does a successful interview look like?
Right, okay, well, it can take many different forms, but I basically, what I'm looking for visually is someone who is excited about education, and that will just kind of shine out of your face. It's hard to sort of describe what that looks like, but, you know, I'll often ask a question about, you know, for example, you know, was there a teacher in the past who inspired you? A successful answer to that normally is accompanied with someone getting really excited and going, oh yeah, I had this teacher and this is what he did, you know, and then talk about the skills and talk about the attributes and be able to show a real sort of clear understanding of why those attributes are potentially helpful for you in the field. So I think I'm looking for someone that's engaging and friendly, and I think that kids would like, you know, and somebody that is, you don't have to be, you know, the most well-read person in the world. It's not all about, to be honest with you, you don't have to have bookshelves full of books and be able to demonstrate great reading. It's about how you can energize the kids.
Yep. I always say when I'm recruiting, it's quite a creative industry. You have to be creative with your ideas and how to engage children, and especially children with different learning needs. So it is a very creative industry, because when you're drawing up your lesson plans, it's really having to come up with different ideas and how you can capture the imagination of the children and help them learn. So it's really just looking at what you feel is the right skills and attributes for the profession, even doing a mind map and why you feel that you meet those skills and attributes. It helps you with your interview, it helps you with your personal statement. So yeah, that's that's a great building block, is really to look at mind maps and then build upon them. Okay. How many places are available this year? Are invitations for interview still being sent out? So Sharon already answered that question. There's about a class size about 80 and 90. So we have not officially been given the government targets yet, officially. Is that right, Sharon?
I think we're aiming for 89 this year, but I don't know whether that's a government produced figure or whether that's a university, but we're aiming for 89.
89.
Mm-hmm.
And invites are still being sent out for successful applicants. But again, we don't know when that will close. It's just depending on how many applications we receive and who is successful at interview. If I have prior experience with children, but it is from before my undergraduate degree, is it worth mentioning?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I mean the certificate and what the awarding bodies were at the time. So you don't need anything now, any qualification. You don't need the certificates at the moment. If you know what your qualifications are at a application stage, I would still submit an application. And then later on, if we're needing to see, say, a transcript to then get you to decide on the next stages of the assessment process, then we'll request that from you, okay? But I wouldn't hold up an application on that basis alone, okay? So we've got one here, and it says, if your degree doesn't contain enough credits relating to English, is there other options to earn English credits? I'm currently studying psychology, but have 40 credits in English from first year.
As long as those 40 credits are in English literature. Specifically, if they were only in English language, say only in English language, but if it was English language, that wouldn't be enough. There has to be the study of text and society.
Yep. Okay, but we're here to advise in that anyway. Okay. If we're unsure, we always go to Navan or Sharon, and they'll advise further. Okay. And Fiona's just made a comment. It says, "I love Shuggy Bean." Brilliant.
Great. Well then, let's come to Strathclyde and we're going to tear that to pieces and ruin it for you.
How many interviews do you typically carry out a year / session? So for English, how many have we done for English right now? We've got a lot of interview sessions.
We're getting through them quite quickly, and they're picking up in the next week or so.
Yep.
We've got 3 people just now working on interviews, and once I'm able to get back to it, I can be doing sort of 20 a week. So do get in as fast as you can. You know, we are quite, like, Navan and I are willing to work right through the summer and keep on interviewing. So, I mean, I know that life sometimes does get in the way, but if you want to give yourself the absolute best chance, get your application in while the feeling for it is live, and you know your metal's all raised. Get onto it just now and don't leave it.
Definitely. Any other questions from anybody at all? Any other comments? Just waiting for anything to come through. Anybody else? Well, I think I've got one here. What sort of text do you usually work with, aside from, we've answered that one. That was it, right? Okay, Q&A one. How much notice for interviews do we receive? We try to give about 2 weeks notice, ideally, for interviews. But when it comes to later on in the cycle, they can be quite, it's not as 2 weeks. So if we are still interviewing within July periods, sometimes it can be a week, or it's because the start date of the course is coming soon. So we want to try and get as many successful applicants through as quick as possible, so that you can do the registration on time, because if you do not register on time, you don't have an online timetable or online materials, and it could be a little bit of a nightmare. Okay. How many, right? As a current Strathclyde student, can we apply directly, or do we need to go through UCAS? If you're a home applicant, you have to go through UCAS. Okay. Is there additional courses to take to earn the full 80 credits needed to meet the entry requirements?
Sometimes when that kind of question comes to us, Navan and I will say, go and just do it on the Open University or something like that. We'll offer short courses that are, like small amounts of credits like that. And that's the best thing, I think, to do. If you don't have the literature, just go and get the literature, go get it.
I applied in November and have still heard nothing, while others I know applied later. I have been interviewed. Are interviews offered randomly, or should I be contact us? Okay. Let me just put through our mainstream one, and we can see what's happening with your application. Okay. But we do have up to a certain date to get back to you. Okay. Right. That's the email address for you. Okay, and just email us. Again, we are really busy with emails right now, but we will get back to you and have a little look at that. Okay. Are there any texts on teaching practice you would suggest looking into before beginning the course to prepare as well as possible? Sharon named one in my interview, but I actually can't remember the title she mentioned.
Hi there, Felicity. Nice to hear from you. It's called Becoming a Critically Reflective Teacher by Stephen Brookfield. Worth its weight in gold, it will give you a real sort of window into what it's like to be a practitioner in the classroom. He's talking from the perspective of university education, but everything that he says is absolutely applicable to being a reflective practitioner in a secondary school.
Anything else anybody wants to ask? Any COVID related questions at all? I know that I had quite a lot of questions in my webinar the last time. Nope. So I'll just wait a couple of more minutes to see if anybody else has any other questions, okay? Will classes be online, Sharon?
It could well be that some of our classes will be online. I think one of the big discussions that is happening in education, and certainly at higher education level in the last few months, is that actually there are some huge positives to be taken from the fact that we've had to move to online learning. There are some things about online learning that make things easy for students and for teachers. And it could be that quite a lot of your lectures next year, for example, are asynchronous. I.e. that's lectures that are posted online and you just have, access to the recordings and things like that. I think a lot of lecturers will be moving to a kind of blended learning approach, which is, sometimes we do seminars on campus, sometimes we do them online. So I would certainly be prepared for that. I'm hoping that we don't have to do it because of the COVID situation, but I think that education's changed forever. And I think the way that we take up spaces is probably changed forever in education, certainly at higher education level.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody got questions about placements at all, or UCAS, anything? I know someone, I'll just read out this question from Alicia. So I've already answered this, but I'll read it out for the rest of you as well. Do we alternate the 36 weeks? So 1 week we are on campus and the next we are on school placement, or do we complete the 18 weeks on campus first before the 18 weeks of school placement? So it's split into 2 placements, one in semester 1 and one in semester 2. So you are in classes first, and then you'll be taking whatever you learn within the class, the theory side, and you'll be putting it into practice within school placements. Okay. So that's how it will work. It's 8 weeks for semester 1 and 10 weeks for semester 2. Carrie, when it comes to placement, is being able to drive essential? So what I would advise you to do is there is a page on our website. So all you have to do is type in PGDE in the search engine. It'll take you to a landing page for PGDE, and it's got a section for placements. It is really handy, and it tells you how your placements are done through SPS, what the travel can be, how our partnership models work. So we've got a partnership model, and it is usually, it's 9 West partnership local authorities, and most of them are based within the central belt, the west central belt of Scotland. Okay, can you say any more about that, Sharon, at all, about the partnerships? Or
Just to say that, quite a lot of my current students don't drive, and quite a lot of them are on 2 buses a morning and 2 buses in the evening, and it's tiring. It is tiring, and it's the way that I didn't actually get my driving license until 5 years ago when I was in my mid-40s. So my entire teaching life has been without a car. So no, you don't need a car. I think if you live somewhere quite remote already, then it could be that, your local school is going to be far away, and maybe, if you live in a remote place, your transport links won't be great. So you'll probably already be aware of, the need within your community, and you'll know what the transport links are. But generally within the Western Central Belt, people can get to their work in the morning. Don't worry about not being able to drive.
Yep. So the best place to go to is that placement section, and it explains it all and how it works, okay? But you do put down on your placement form that when you're providing all the details, where you live, do you have access to a car, you do provide all that information. It is taken into consideration, okay? But you can be expected to travel up to 90 minutes each way, okay? Any other questions at all? Does any of you find the webinar to be useful today? Any feedback would be great. It's really helpful, thank you. Ruff, how long after receiving an application do you get in touch with applications? I applied for the 29th of January. So usually what happens is 29th of January, we have an insurge of applications coming through, and we're trying our best to work through them all. So it can take a while for us to get through them all, but we will be in contact with you. We do have up to a certain period of time to get back to applicants via UCAS. As by the UCAS policy, as indicated within the UCAS policy. But we are reviewing them on a daily basis. It could just be potentially that we've had a high influx during that time and we're working through them. Okay. Really enjoyed it. Wish I've done one sooner. Great. Glad to hear it. Very happy. Definitely useful, both in providing and allowing us to sort of. Thank you so much. It's great to get a little bit of feedback on that, because it could be later down in a couple of months if the resources there and availability is there that we do in our webinar. So thank you so much for this feedback. Do you want to add anything, Sharon, at all, or any more messages?
Thank you for your interest in becoming an English teacher. We certainly need good English teachers, so I'm really energised and happy to see that you've been involved and asked really great questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully see you in August, and hopefully see you before then for an interview.
Yeah, but we are here to help you through this journey, and if you need to get in contact with myself or Sharon at any time, we're always happy to help. We understand that this is a big step to apply for the PGDE, and it is a huge commitment to apply and to come onto the course. We do understand that, and we want to help you as much as possible. Again, it's a very rewarding degree, and we understand why a lot of people want to go into teaching. So we just want to thank you all for joining us today and listening to us. And we wish you luck on your application and if you're successful interview. And again, for the ones who have not heard back, just drop me an email and I'll look into that for you, okay? Right, see you later. Bye.
Hi everyone, enjoy your evening.